Hello and welcome to another edition of Ambient Talkie, a show where we dive into some weird and wacky equipment and wonderful, call it whatever you want, music. I'm Andy from Two Round Robins, and I hope you're ready for some general thoughts about the musical journey in which I'm currently partaking. As you can see, today's episode is not really going to be too technical, but rather I just want to throw some thoughts I have regarding the genre that many describe as ambient music, and why I think that every musician should at some point embark on a similar journey. Now, what do I mean about this particular ambient journey? Well, personally, mine started quite late in my music career. I was your basic teen who got a guitar and after some trial and error managed to put some songs together. Throughout the years I had many projects, from film scores to dark Americana folk stuff, to synth-wavy pop, to trip-hop with vocals, and back again to more folky acoustic stuff. Basically, all of these were derived in a somewhat philosophy of making songs, at least those that have a sense of your typical song form, or saying even more basically, those that have, let's say, your typical verses, choruses, bridges, A, B, C, D, E parts, and all that. Something that, at least to me, made perfect sense, and do believe me, it still does today. I believe that within the years of doing this, I have at least a strong understanding and a knack to put songs in a reliable and steady form and structure, so it completely stands on its own. But let's not go on a tangent. Why am I saying this? Well, you might have noticed I use the word form or structure quite a lot. And here's why my natural tendencies towards form is completely turned upside down. There are many ways to describe ambient music, or the musical genre that many call ambient, as different artists and listeners interpret it in their own unique way. Some even denounce the term, refusing to use it as something to describe their compositions or creations, and I don't really blame them. To some, ambient means quite literally music for background, which has a strong passive connotation for the listener. Thus, at times, this, to some, is reason enough to denounce it as, let's say, nothing more than organized soundscape, not a pinch more failing to that of a common traffic noise. I find that rather silly, as ambient music has a unique position for my own personal listening experience, as it forces me to listen to it extremely closely, while at the same time it kind of gives me enough space to drift away without missing too much. Something that is not the case for other musical genres or styles, at least not to such an extent. But I digress. How would we define ambient music? Let's try to do this. I believe that everyone has a certain idea what exactly could fit into this category, but in my own personal interpretation, it's something that's formless, it's beatless, it's calm, it's unintrusive, it's evolving or ever evolving, and oftentimes I think it's abstract, or at least courageous enough to kind of cross the boundaries at what we deem as typical in our Western 12 equal temperament. So, going by this description, for me, with my own music background, to overcome the standardization of your typical song form, it was quite challenging. So, when I started to slowly approach the idea of doing ambient music within, let's say, a DAW setup, this definition seemed rather hard to to grasp, as I was used to making music that had a somewhat typical song form, as I explained multiple times, and was mostly clocked to a certain BPM. But I was doing this kind of music just for fun in the beginning. I was exploring my OP1 and I was trying to see how it kind of works in a way, and I was mostly thinking of using OP1 as an ambient machine rather than, your lo-fi chill beats or whatever. But, at the same time, listening to ambient artists that I admire, I soon realized that there was a hidden wall how their tracks sounded to mine. And I know we shouldn't compare really, but I believe trying to dissect some stuff is rather beneficial, as it kind of pushes you into uncertain territory, somewhere that it's exciting enough to kind of challenge you to see what new and exciting things you can do. Anyways, listening to other people's music, I kind of soon realized that I'm trapped in a loop of creating music with a standard framework, and I had to reassess my whole understanding of music to, let's say, a far broader definition than that in which I was most comfortable with. So you might be wondering, how the hell do you do that? How to overcome this? Well, I'm not speaking here as an authority on ambient music. I'm far from that. I'm just a traveler or an explorer that kind of wants to share guidance with you fine folk. I just kind of want to see, look, this kind of worked for me. Maybe it's going to work for you. But at the same time, I wouldn't really say take my word for it. But hopefully this few tips and tricks might help you in your own unique journey. Firstly, I'd suggest trying out the very, very scary art of turning off the sync. In your mind, the clock, at least for me, should only be that which tells time while you look upon it on the wall. Once you start getting acquainted that all of the sound waves that kind of travel around you don't really need to be scheduled, but may at times come rather randomly, it will kind of get easier to accept that music doesn't need to run on a tight schedule. So in this way, I suggest using some generative synth techniques and try to play secondary sounds, like manually, that are opposed to whatever the machine is doing, slowly shifting out the sync and, most importantly, humanizing it. Let your mind kind of get used to ever-evolving chaos that might start happening around you. Another nice technique is using asynchronous loopers and delays, which will by default destroy your sense of perfect timing. Now, do I believe that ambient has to be in sync? Of course not. These are just the ways to let you think a bit differently and, most importantly, outside of the box. Now, second trick, or let's say a technique that is very good, or at least I use it quite a lot. So I'd start here. From my understanding, ambient music can be really, really, really flat. Dynamic jumps that we might see in, let's say, modern pop songs or similar seem to be absent from creating an ambient piece. I used to overthink how to dynamically translate my ideas of happenings rather than just paint an overlay. Ambient music, at least for me, should give a feeling of sense, of a feeling, or let's say a space. It's far more impressionistic than expressionistic. It should invite the listener into a world, but not guide them where to go next. So essentially, you're building a world where the listener interacts with their own accord. So, question here is how to do that? Well, it's an abstract thought to explain, I think, but what I'd suggest is drive close association with whatever sounds you're making. What do these sounds represent in this little world that you're building? Are they brighter? Are they supposed to be dark? Are they heavy, light, quirky even? All are part of your palette, and just like colors, they tend to work better within a certain combination. But I'd really suggest here to never be afraid to go beyond your typical standard color etiquette. Another thing that I think really works, and it comes from my own personal love of motifs and little melodic lines and melodic content that I can, at times use throughout the piece, but oftentimes I would quite quickly overcrowd the sonic spectrum and so easily, and I still do this to this day. It's really, really easy to get carried away and just throw whatever new idea you seem that would work with whatever you're working and just let it loose. So a good rule of thumb here is that take every new event or sound slowly and listen carefully how it influences the overall sound, and is it important? Well, in a way, I would really suggest here just to listen to the scene that you're creating. And listen to the part of your brain that says, "Hey, I think you have created a lovely environment." And if you listen to that part of the brain and just think, "Okay, cool. Do I need to put anything more in it?" And oftentimes the answer is no. And at this time, what you should do, and I think it's a good way of standing your ground here, is that try to then shift your focus into shaping the overall sounds that have entered this environment, rather than trying to incorporate new elements. And the last one that I really want to touch upon is don't be afraid to experiment into more abstract territories. For me, I had quite a lot of difficulty letting some stuff run out of control. And oftentimes they didn't serve the overall purpose. But in this rare few times that they did, they were considered worthy of a personal breakthrough. And of course, you should have as much fun as you can doing it, trying to tame some wild ideas for the purpose of easier implementation. So the question here is, if I done all this, if I created all this, what is the point of this? Well, going from a musician that was held in the tight clutches of your typical form, it was very, very freeing trying out more formless approach, and I believe that every musician, even if they are not interested in pursuing more ambient style, to at least give it a try and learn from creating more formless and beatless music. Sometimes challenging yourself by stepping outside your comfort zone and embracing something that you deem uncomfortable gives unique and enriching results. So yeah, I know this was a bit more philosophical than technical, but new technical ambient talkie coming in the future episode, in the next episode. But I would really like to ask, if you have a unique journey in trying out something new, maybe ambient music or any other art form, please tell me a bit about it in the comments down below. I would love to hear your own unique perspectives on the subject. As always, I would suggest hitting that like button if you like this content. If not, you can dislike it. It won't really be that bothersome. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And most importantly, I do wish you a pleasant evening, morning, afternoon, whenever you might be watching or listening in. And till next time, I would just like to say, take care.